Okay, so for my land talk, I decided to talk to my dad, David Principe Sr. He grew up in Johnston, Rhode Island for most of his life. He moved there when he was 4. He lived on Belvedere Street and lived there for a majority of his childhood and is now back there as an adult, living there again. So if you just want to talk a little bit about kind of what Johnston was like when you were growing up and what it was like when you were young.
Well, Johnston was very rural when I first moved there. There was woods behind our house that stretched for miles. There was not a lot of commercialized, built up roads or streets. It was very, very rural and very, not as populated as it is now.
Mm-hmm.
Growing up there, we actually had a movie theater in Johnston at one point in time. That's gone now. There's Johnston Memorial Park, which is actually still there, which was a place where all the teams played baseball and football and basketball and things like that. And all of that is still there, but the town itself has gone through a pretty big change. I was there for probably 20 years of my childhood and then left for 20 years, and now we're back there. And, my whole family's lived there my whole life, so it's not like we didn't live there, but we were always in Johnston for, all that time frame. But the town itself has gone through a very large change.
Yeah. What type of, is your neighborhood stayed relatively the same size, or have, the areas around there really expanded?
The neighborhood where I grew up has probably quadrupled in size. Like I said before, there was nothing but woods from out my mom's back door all the way up to the Johnston High School, which was probably, as the crow flies through the woods, a good 3 or 4 mile stretch. That entire area has been built up, and it's more houses, which means more people, which means more roads and more cars on the road. Also, over near the high school, they've built more soccer fields and indoor complexes, and have taken most of the forestry out of the area. Our cross-country trail used to go through the woods right behind the high school, which basically doesn't exist anymore now. Atwood Avenue, which is the main street that goes right through the center of Johnston, has become so commercialized. Before, there was just a couple little strip plazas when I was growing up there, and there might have been a Subway or a hot weenie place or something like that in there, and a couple of small stores, to where now we have Super Stop and Shop and Walmarts and CVS and Brooks Pharmacy and all kinds of stuff that was not there when we were growing up there. But a few of the things that were there when we were growing up, there was always a McDonald's, there was always a Burger King. Both of those are still in existence, although the McDonald's is in a slightly different location, but it's right in the same general area. But we've got a BJ's Wholesale Club now, Burlington Coat Factory, all these things that take up a lot of space that we're not there. Home Depot. So Johnston has become very commercialized. Like I said,
so you'd say most of the small businesses that were around when you were a kid, most of the family-owned restaurants and stuff like that, have kind of been taken over by commercialized chain restaurants and stuff like that.
Well, we are very fortunate especially in Rhode Island, to have a lot of family-owned restaurants and things like that. So there's still a lot of that here. But right next door, there's 2 or 3 commercialized places. Yeah. So, there's a Taco Bell, there's, the Mexican place. I can't think of the name of it. Anyway, there's, Mexican restaurant, but then there's also places like Luigi's and things like that are all family-owned businesses that have thrived very well. So restaurants are kind of the one thing in our area that don't get hit, but mom and pop stores, like all the small hardware stores, are gone.
Yeah.
The small family drug stores are gone. That kind of stuff doesn't exist anymore, but that's fairly common everywhere. A couple of things that have, we still have the bowling alley. Town Hall Lanes has been there since I was a kid. That's still here.
Was that a pretty popular, I heard you mention the movie theater. And like the bowling, I mean, I remember when I was a kid, we'd still go to the bowling alley in Johnston. Like, were those like popular things that kids would do, like in middle and high school and stuff like that around Johnston when you were in high school?
Yeah, when I was a kid, Town Hall Lanes was very popular, and actually behind Town Hall Lanes, they used to have a BMX little racing
Oh wow.
circuit where you could, as a kid, you could bring your BMX there, and as long as you had a helmet and elbow pads and stuff like that, you could ride on the little circuit with all the whoop-de-doos and the berms and all that kind of stuff. There was a driving range in Johnston, but that's gone now too.
Up on Hartford Ave?
Yeah, there was one on Hartford Avenue heading up Hartford Avenue towards Situate, and then there was one actually down on Hartford Avenue, like towards where Auntie Donna lives. There was another one over there. Both of those didn't make it. The land has gone up for sale and is being used for other things now. The BJ's that used to be up on Hartford Avenue became so popular that they basically built a superstore BJ's up behind Home Depot.
Yeah.
That's 3 times the size, and they got rid of the one that was on Hartford Avenue, but still all in Johnston. Like I said, that area, Atwood Avenue, Hartford Avenue, is very commercialized.
Yeah, especially the car lots and stuff like that.
Yes.
Was that land pretty much just all wood? There's a strip on Hartford Ave that's probably, what would you say, a half mile long of just...
Well, yeah, they call it the Hartford Auto Mile, and basically for that entire mile, there's nothing but car dealerships, whereas, like you said before, they were either just, storage units or little factories or small businesses and things like that. They built these in that same area. There's a assisted living now over there that wasn't there when I was growing up. They've built Hartford Avenue is very built up.
Yeah.
So.
Do you notice any changes in like your like has the high school gone under a lot of renovations and stuff? Or?
The high school looks exactly as it did when they have not done a blessed thing to the high school.
It's funny how everything else changes, but the high school.
The high school was fairly new when I went to school there. I might have only been like maybe 7 or 8 years old or 9 years old or something like that back in 1984.
Yeah.
But here we are in 2018. The school looked exactly the same. They haven't put any additions onto it. But the middle school has been renovated several times, and they've added wings onto the middle school.
Yeah.
The high school was pretty big for a high school back then, so it's probably just at the point now where it's going to reach that breaking point where it needs to get either some updates or another floor added to it or something. But the traffic in Johnston has gotten quite different too. Where we live on Hartford Avenue used to be a 1-lane road on each side. It was a 2-lane road. Then they changed it to a 1-lane road with the island in the middle to try and slow traffic down. And they had to change it back to a 2-lane road because the influx of people traveling from Connecticut through Johnston to get to Providence for work has increased greatly, where the mornings now are just a big rush hour. Even Route 295 that used to go through Johnston was always a very quiet road, and now there's traffic backups like everywhere else because there's just so many people trying to get through that one area where it comes right through Johnston. We've got the big Citizens Bank Plaza that's being built over on Greenville Avenue. That was all woods before. It used to be motorcycle trails and things like that, and now it's going to be, I forgot how many square feet, but there's 5 buildings going up with a big parking garage, and they're going to have the Citizens Bank world headquarters there.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot. Actually, Johnston's done a good job of increasing the tax revenue over the years because, like I said, we went from a very rural town to what my grandfathers and grandmother called the sticks when we were younger, to what's I would consider now a pretty metropolitan town for the area.
Do you? Even I remember 2 years ago running through those dirt bike trails where the Citizens is now going up. But do you expect that? I would assume that's going to change the traffic on, what's that street that runs along Greenville?
Greenville Avenue.
Yeah. Or they're building on and off ramps, right?
Right. They're building on and off ramps that are going to come and dump the traffic off right onto Greenville Avenue. by law, they can't make them go in and out of the actual facility because it's against the law. A major U.S. Highway has to drop off onto a road. It can't go onto private property.
Yeah.
So just at rush hour and things like that, I'm sure it's going to be much, much worse. But Citizens Bank did a good job of trying to build some things for the community in there too. So they've built soccer fields and playgrounds, and there's going to be some walking trails. So, even though some stuff has gotten built up, I don't want to make it sound like the town is so built up that it's still not homey.
Yeah.
But there's still some nice features here.
Nice. I heard you mention the Johnson Memorial Park's probably a good example of that.
Yeah.
Is that pretty, I know there's, from working there a few years ago, there's 3 baseball fields in the park and then 1 more up top. Has that all been pretty similar, or have they kind of expanded that?
When I was growing up, they had the 2 baseball fields down on the main grounds, and they had the little house there that they have the fireplaces in and things like that people used to rent out.
Yeah.
And the playground and things like that. But the walking track was not there when I was a kid that goes around the pond.
Mm-hmm.
They built all that later when I grew up. I would say probably when I was in high school or a little before that, they built the softball field that's up 1 level right behind the middle school.
Yeah.
But they've gone through and done a lot of renovations to the area. They've upgraded the basketball courts. They've put fences around all the fields, whereas before when we were a kid, they just, had a white line that was out in the outfield, and that's where you hit to.
Did the pool house exist when you were a kid?
That's a good point. There was a pool and a pool house there. We used to go there for summer camp and things like that, and swim in the pool, and they'd have day camps and things like that, which they still do. But for whatever reason, they filled in the pool, made it a parking lot, and that's where they store all the equipment for the town.
That's where us good old Johnston Rec Department worked out of.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Parks and Rec.
Yep. All right. Is there anything else you can think of that is kind of stood out as kind of drastically changing or surprisingly changing or anything like that?
Well, even the demographic of people that live here has changed.
Mm-hmm.
Before, when the town wasn't as populated, naturally there was much less of different ethnic backgrounds and things like that. Now it's very diverse, which is nice. But even like Killingly Street and places like that all led into South Providence and things like that. The town is kind of switched over from a very rural town to the outskirts that borderline Providence are almost little mirror images of the Providence and South Providence towns.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, you've got Scituate and Smithfield, which border Johnston, which are more rural towns that we still have some rural aspect and lots of a little bit more land out there by the reservoir and things like that. So it's a very, very different town, whereas before it was really just a blanket statement type of town.
Everything the same.
Everything was the same.
Yeah.
It was not very populated, not very, not built up to a point where, now you try to avoid it Atwood Avenue at all costs because the traffic is tough.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well that was definitely touched on pretty much everything that I was hoping to talk about. Thank you very much for
You're welcome.
Taking a seat and taking some time to talk to me.
You're welcome. Glad I could help.
Yeah, thank you very much.